so much for the introduction, Ernst. So the amount of data is always increasing, and with this also the amount of information all of us has to digest. So much actually that it can sometimes be overwhelming to work with this data. This is especially true in functions where data handling skills are not yet so widespread, and also in scenarios where data occurs mostly unstructured, like in the form of text, and where data is not really consolidated. One such function where we see this problem is actually the risk and compliance functions in financial institutions. Some of their typical tasks include the following. They have to do background checks on new customers that will be onboarded for the purposes of the KYC, Know Your Customer process, where you have to integrate information from different sources and also often text information. A second task is the monitoring of communication that occurs between employees of a bank, customers of the bank, but also business partner. This monitoring has to occur in order to identify fraudulent behavior. A third task is the tracking of newest regulations and policies that are issued, for instance, by the FINMA. And as these policies are issued so often and also change, it can be hard to stay up to date. A fourth case is then the legal prosecution, and this is also probably the most extreme example of a text handling challenge. Typically, in a legal prosecution, many documents have to be reviewed, and they can stem from a variety of different sources. In some cases, they are not even digitized, so they are not even machine readable. And in these cases, it becomes even more crucial to have proper text handling techniques in order to work more time efficient and also more accurate. For these challenges, we actually want to propose today a novel text analytics framework for risk and compliance. This framework consists of 4 different modules, so really 4 pillars that then work in concert to make life easier. I want to briefly go through these 4 modules. The first one is actually a search engine part. This is a consolidation part of data from different sources, so could be public, but could also be internal data sources. That are then presented in a search engine where they can be searched and the crucial elements or the crucial pieces of information can be found. The second module is natural language processing. This serves to enrich the information presented in the search database so that it can be even more easily accessed. But it can be also used to summarize the main findings and help the user find the important pieces of information. The third module is actually a user experience topic. So in the cockpit, basically a key document of your document set is presented, is comparable, and is also cross-linked to all of the references within your text dataset that are relevant. And this creates a nice augmented workflow that is not intended to automate the user, but to make his work faster and also more accurate. The fourth module is about ad hoc analytics. So the topic here is really that the user is not left alone with the data set that he might hit borders when handling. And so in the analytics topic, you provide ad hoc analytics and ad hoc insights whenever they are needed. So you provide to the user what they need. Today, we want to demonstrate to you how this framework can operate. And for this, we have taken 2 use cases that we want to present to you now. And for the first use case, I hand over to my colleague, Philipp.
Thanks, Jacqueline. So this first use case on our journey to this framework is already a couple of years ago, I guess. The question was there in the context of background checks. This client, they onboard regularly high-profile clients. And one of part of the KYC, basically, of that how to know them is to search what happened on the internet. So what do people write about such a person on the internet? So the question was, can we help organize that workflow? So they used to do it just by hand, Googling them and looking up, maybe finding some pages. So the question is, can you also go into the long tail, for instance? Can you not only look at the first 10 pages, but also at the first 50 or 100 or 1,000? Now, when you do something like that, then you have immediately extremely huge pile of data, of pages. So question is, how can you analyze them? The answer there is you use NLP methods, for instance, sentiment analysis, named entity recognition, summarization, things like that. Finally, they asked, can that be done on Azure? So we went on and built this small POC. Because it was on Azure, we actually looked at Bing, and this is kind of what it's, how it's working. So basically, you have here in this very sophisticated UI right now, as you see there's also some errors there, but you can just search for people. Let's search, for instance, for Steve Jobs, who wants to become our client now. So let's see, I don't know this name, who was that? What can we find about him? So I just entered it and it will start searching for these for pages and will ingest them. So while it does that in the background, we can look at what we looked for clients before. So we have here, for instance, Bill Gates, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, and so on. And you see here already the average sentiment by person. So for instance, here Bill Gates is really has a bad reputation. So let's look at that. We are here already sorted by negative sentiment, and we see, okay, there was actually real news, military arrests Bill Gates. So that's definitely sentiment -1. Probably for celebrities, we also should input fake news detection there. So let's see. For some reason, it didn't load this part here. I'm not sure. So that's the demo effect. So basically, it should. Yeah, now it did. So you see immediately here. Now we have also Steve Jobs. He is much nicer written about. So what is in the background of that? It's kind of easy. You do a Bing search, you go for the Bing API, you download the pages in the background, you scrape them and use our open source toolkit NLPZ to ingest them into Elasticsearch. Okay, so back to you for the demo case.
So this was the first use case that we wanted to show you, and I will now directly switch to the second use case. This use case is actually based on a project in a legal prosecution that we have been supporting. But of course, we cannot show the data from this project right there, as it is highly confidential. And so for today, we have brought a demonstration corpus with us that is actually a legal corpus based around the Data Protection Act in Switzerland. So it contains judgments around the Data Protection Act, but also the law text itself and comments about experts in the field. And with this, I hand over directly to Philipp to show you the first part there.
Yes. So the first part I want to show you is what Jacqueline already talked about, this user experience. So often you have a central document that you want to really have a good grasp on. So not only see the document and maybe search in it, but you want to really enrich it, have something like an app for this document. So that might be in legal prosecution, it might be the bill that was handed in policy tracking, it might be the policy norm that you're looking at. So for instance, here now we are looking at this, let's go into full mode again, at the Data Protection Act. So in German, it's the Datenschutzgesetz, the DSG. It was enacted in 1992. There was a version discussed, I guess, 10 years ago, the EDSG, and now this revised DSG is ratified and will become law next year, beginning of next year. So you see, you have this central document and you have different versions of it. So that's one important thing. We have split it up into meaningful pieces. So for instance, here into articles. So you can then go, for instance, to the next article, article 2 in all of the 3 versions. Now what's changed? And for that, we have actually something that in IT and data science you might be used to, but in legal practice, people are not used to diffuse. So this is really nice that they can see here immediately what did change between those 2 versions. So that's one part. The other part is that you actually see all the references onto either Article 2 of the first version or the EDSG or the revised DSG. So for instance, here you see Supreme Court decisions in Switzerland that mention this Article 2, even, for instance, here, paragraph 1, and so on. You can go through. Then we have also some precedents. For instance, let's go to this. So you immediately can click on it, and you are right there in this document. You see that's here, Article 2, paragraph 1 that was mentioned. You see it's actually also mentioning Article 3 in the DSG, as well as here. So you can click on that and you immediately get back to Article 3 in the DSG and are right there. You also have here highlighted the named entities that were recognized in this document. You can go, if you want to see what happens here, on the previous page or just to the very first page to see what document this is. Maybe a final thing is that actually here you see this version of the revised DSG. This Article 2 is split onto 2 pages. So it starts on page 1 and then it continues on page 2. So we do put that together so you don't have to scroll around onto different pages. Okay. So you saw a little bit what you can do with such such a nice interface where you really see the main documents of your task at hand, of your project. But the basis of that is that it has a really strong data pipeline that we use not only for this cockpit part, but also for the second part that Jacqueline is about to show you. Namely, we split up the PDF into single pages, we enrich them, we recognize the entities, we do OCR if necessary, we do image embeddings, stuff like that, so that we have a very powerful base for all the applications on top of it, namely this cockpit, the search, and analytics. So back to you.
So now I briefly want to show you the search engine. So the search engine is really where all of the different data sources that you might need come together and are searchable, in our case with the SQLite database and the full text search module. So this is the second tab of the tool. You would use it as you would know it from your favorite search database. And you would see at one glance what is the summary of the pages that result, where in the content does your keyword occur, and also some NLP enrichments like the entities. You can get a brief overview over all the search results, but you can also go into more depth to look at the pages, as we have already seen before, and you can switch to the PDF viewer where you can navigate within the document, where you find your keywords highlighted and also your entities, and you find cross-references to any other document or any other text entity in your data set that might be referenced. This is replicating actually the inherent network structure of any text database or any text data set. And like this, it is basically recreating an internet for you that is fully searchable. So when could this search engine be useful for risk and compliance purposes? So the first use case that we think of is the email and communication analysis. So if you have your emails at your fingertips available to search through, you can already follow up on possible fraudulent actions. The second one is the review process in a legal prosecution, where you have to go through all of the documents in your company in order to find the relevant pieces of evidence for a prosecution. What is also nice about the search engine is that it contains some collaboration features. And with those, you can actually flag different pages as relevant, irrelevant, or belonging to any other user-defined category. Now, both of these cases actually will also greatly benefit from an analytics layer that is put on top. So for instance, in fraud detection in emails, this analytics layer could detect outliers in the email communication. And by providing then a drill down functionality, the user can go back to the actual emails and analyze what is written in those outliers and whether they are actually fraudulent actions that have to be followed up upon. Also, such an analytics layer can summarize the progress of document review, as typically many people would be involved in such a task, and it would be crucial to be able to track the progress. The same is true for authority requests. I'm thinking of tax authorities that are requesting you to prove that all of your customers are complying with the tax regulations. And also there you could track the review process of your customer accounts and also even the remediation phase. So with this, you can greatly support a big risk and compliance task force. Now, it is of course not always trivial to introduce such a new digital tool into a world where people are not used to working with these tools and where also trust is sometimes lacking. So we want to share with you actually what we believe to be the most critical success factors for such projects. The first one is actually about tailoring the framework to a specific use case. So the first part is, of course, to tailoring it to the specific text data set that is used, but also to the legal system. And then it goes on to also tailoring to the workflow that the people have. So also to the processes of the company and also to the reporting infrastructure, for instance. The second part is about making sure that you don't put a black box in front of your users, that they don't understand what is going on. You have to make it fully transparent what you are doing with the data, how you are crunching it, and how you are presenting it. It's only like this that you can gain the trust of the users. And the third aspect is already represented in our framework, but it's really about the combination of a user interface and data science skills. So you cannot leave the user alone with such an interface or with such database, but you always need to answer their most pressing questions as they occur. With this, I would like to make a call to action for you to try out our demonstration tool. Tell us what your impression is. And if you would like to discuss applications of this text analytics framework for your unstructured data, we are very happy to do so. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jacqueline and Philipp. It was very interesting. I do not see any questions in the Q&A. So if there are any, then please type them. We can still discuss them. I do have quite a few. So if you allow me to start, I wanted. So you mentioned for new use cases there may be some tailoring, and I also wondered how much manual work is needed. So let's say you cover a completely new domain, perhaps some large collection of PDFs of reports in a company. How much manual work is needed? So do you need to make new labels for your named entity recognition, or is this all largely automated? And the same goes a bit for the tailoring.
So I think we can actually split the pipeline in two parts. So the first part is actually nicely automated. Also named entity recognition is nicely automated. Where a bit the manual work comes in is when it comes to recognizing links inherent to your document set, because this can be very different things. So already if you would adapt it to a different law text, you would of course have different references. So this is one point where I would see manual efforts coming in. And then potentially also some cleaning ups. Like we have done some cleanings on the named entities where we have used domain knowledge or knowledge about the use case to map them onto one another in order to also make the search capacity better.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So about the named entity recognition, because I know that these are very domain specific. So there's not much relabeling needed in that case. You use a generic corpus and it works well.
Yeah, so in our experience, it worked quite well. I guess it depends a little bit on how well you need it to be. Yeah. So if the out-of-the-box things work, then that's good. Else, what we do, for instance, is also cleaning of the named entity. So you might have different versions of the same entity. So that cannot be done. We cannot do that right now automatically. So we just have a list. Okay, these two words are actually the same concept.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I had a second question. I see no questions came in yet, so I just continue. So for both use cases, but I think especially the first use case, having an audit trail and documentation may be very important, right? If you do your research on a certain person, you probably want to fix that somewhere. Is that also embedded in the software, or is that planned?
So in both cases, we actually check all of the information that people put in. For audit, that's one thing. So if you have some possible leak or abuse of the data, so that you can find out who is, and you're quite confident who went for what query at what point. But on the other hand, also to improve the experience. So you can then use these suggestions that people, when people search for something, you see, that's something that others might be interested in. So there are both these things that come together. So yeah, we track that information.
So they're visible to someone in the business checking what compliance did 1 year later, let's say. They are okay. That's good. And just one question: what were the reactions of the legal team for the use case? I'm very interested in that. It's probably a very new tool, something completely new to them. What were the responses that you got?
So actually, these type of lawyers that we worked with on this project right there, they already had some experience with some e-discovery tools, or they tried it actually before, and they didn't work with this at all because it was too complicated, and they This is the part about the understanding what is going on that I mentioned. They didn't understand at all what was going on. So that's also why we try to emphasize this in our project. But of course, we also had some lag time before adoption was actually starting. So it's a tough domain to enter.
Yeah, we see that they really go for the cockpit. So there went some effort into establishing this kind of user interface, and this is absolutely worth it. So that's at least that's, if there's one thing that's a single selling point, then maybe it's that.
Nice, thanks. I already opened it on my phone. It looks really cool.
Yeah, you need to sign up with an email address.
Yeah, so I encourage anyone to try it out. Looks quite interesting and fun. Then thanks a lot for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.